this this
It's
is
so funny that they're doing that now.
I know, she drives me mad. I'm like,
Yeah,
whoa, where's this
I
woman
know.
come from?
This meeting, this recording has ended. I'm like, all right.
Screaming at me. Like, so Isla, as we were just chatting there, I'd just like to apologize as well. I meant to say to you before I hit record, if I'm holding the side of my face or anything, I've been butchered by the dentist this morning.
Oh
So
no.
usually, like, I'm grinning from ear to ear, but please don't think I've got like a resting bitch face or something. If quite funny, and I don't really
That's
properly laugh.
fine. You know,
Um,
you've scared me though, because you hang on, here comes Tunkasila.
oh
Thanks, we're
yeah,
gonna talk about functional
oh,
characters, so what do you want to share? Yeah, that you're the guide. We're gonna talk about the guide. And that's what you are.
oh my goodness.
We've just recorded, we just hit the record button, okay? So,
Hey, he is
I know
more than
it's all about you, Tunkasila, it's all about you. Good girl. Um,
oh,
yeah,
who's
that's the
that?
guide. That's our one of our dogs, Tunkasila, but she's a natural guide when it comes to functional characters. Yeah,
Beautiful,
yeah,
beautiful. Do you wanna tell people a little bit about who you are and your dogs that you've got or your wolves?
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't have wolves anymore.
Oh,
Boo. But
sorry.
yeah, no, don't worry about it. Yeah. Well, I guess like the former, like I'm Dr. Isla Fishburn, but it always makes me laugh. I always kind of prefer to use that title if I'm with someone that I don't really like, and there's not that many people that I don't really like. I'm joking, but yeah, yeah, my background is in zoology, conservation biology, ecosystem health and stability. Um, I have spent almost a decade ago now. No, over a decade ago. I spent some time working with captive wolves for 3 years, and yeah, it was amazing. Like the best time of my life, but also the worst time of my life. That's a talk for another time. But yeah, one of the best times of my life. And it's taken me on this incredible journey of like spiritual health, shamanic practice, mythology, symbolism, conservation, canine wellness, behavior, the whole dog human relationship of conflict, coexistence, our joining together for health and for wellness and for spiritual growth. So, kind of, that's all it in like a big circle. And so, yeah, I used to work with, oh my goodness, I can't even remember now, like 16 wolves maybe. I might be making that number up, I'd have to kind of count them. But yeah, had various captive wolves and then a large mix of wolf hybrids, a large mix of wolf dogs, a few dogs as well. And then at the moment, we just have two dogs that are with us, and they've just all passed over the years. So yeah, that was Tunkasila. You just saw, so she's a Czechoslovakian wolf dog. She's 13 at the weekend, so in
No
two
way.
days' time she's 13. And then we have, she might join us later on. Then we have Charlie, who's also known as Charlie Beanbag Christmas Pants, or Gymnastics Charlie. She's a little cavalier. She's a rescue, so she's at least 14, but we don't quite know how old she is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness! Like as soon as you're sorry, what was her name? Your dog,
Tunkasila.
Chukasila.
Tunkasila, yeah.
As soon as she arrived on the camera, I was like, "Whoa, we have to stop all talks at the minute and just talk into this beautiful breed of dog." I am amazed at what you've done. Sorry, I've missed out on all of your history and learning there, and I've gone straight to the dog.
That
It
doesn't
sounds
matter.
like you've had an amazing um, experiences and what you're passionate in and wellness and helping owners and dogs.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's like I can't see it any other way. And I think I've always had this as a child. Like I've always seen the world like this of like everything is connected. Like even as we're speaking through Zoom and there's space here, there isn't space. There is a giant nervous system that's just keeping everything connected. And so for me, it's like that's also come through my training of ecosystem stability. Like everything is an ecosystem. Either like our dog in itself is a fully functioning ecosystem, and then within it there's an ecosystem within its own ecosystem that's also functioning, and then just as a collective, like drawing the cosmos as a whole circle, we are then just like an ecosystem within that giant ecosystem. And so for me, it's like when we're looking at wellness, when we're looking at health, when we're looking at stability, it's stability across all levels. And what does that look like? um physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and to just kind of create this beautiful equilibrium. Yeah.
I can already tell that my mind is going to be blown chatting to you, and I'm super excited for it.
Yes, I'm excited too. Yeah, really excited.
And
I love to. Yeah, I just love talking about this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can feel it. I can feel it, and I can see it when you're talking about it, and I love it. So before we dive into the functional characters part, then Isla, can
Yes.
we just dive a little bit into when you worked with wolves?
Yeah, for
How
sure.
to time that? Because you said that it was kind of the best time of your life and the worst time of the life. You don't have to detail it, but just yeah, what about the wolves?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The worst time of my life. It just was a big lesson in yeah, big lesson in a relationship that ended. So really deep memories, and you know, even from that perspective, I remember, and it was it was a point in my life when I was just like that. You know, I'm done. I'm just done. And it was actually Tunkasila is a really reactive dog because everyone, when I talk about Tunkasila and go, oh, she's reactive, people are like, oh, it's because she's a wolf dog. And I'm like, no, it's not because she's a wolf dog. It's because she's had trauma. So I used to be in an abusive relationship, and that abuse was not just placed onto me, but also Tunkasila as well. And it's really beautiful in a way that we've had that journey together because I understand her reactions when that trauma comes through. So she can detect adrenaline in a person 48 hours after they've been to the gym, and that is still enough for her to go keep that away from me, because of course her body as a sensory being with all these beautiful receptors that make her whole have learned that the presence of adrenaline is a really bad thing for her, because the presence of adrenaline came, she was exposed to that adrenaline when she was beaten, and so it's just little things like that I'm like, wow, she's just taught me so much. And then on top of that, when we talk about functional character, how she's internalized that, how it becomes so specific to her, not just as an individual but also as a guide, as a functional character as well. And I remember, you know, it really opened up my desire to take my work with dogs on a deeper level, which is what I'm kind of opening up now. I've probably been doing since October, of really exploring this spiritual side that we all are. So it's like, of course we've got to look at behaviour, of course we've got to look at teaching, of course we've got to look at physical health, we've got to look at emotional support, we've got to look at how we mentally support ourselves and our dogs as well. But it's almost like still being a bit hush hush and whispered about this spiritual aspect, and I'm like, guys, we have to be talking about that. It's not like a crazy woo woo, something that like only crazy people talk about. It's like it's part of all of us. Like this, everything that is alive has a spirit, and so many times the spirit is malnourished. Like so many times we talk about physical malnourishment, emotional malnourishment, mental malnourishment, but the soul is also malnourished as well. And so many dogs are living with their humans that equally are operating and living from spiritual malnourishment, and our dogs literally absorb, they carry things for us, they carry our energy, they carry our emotional vibration, and so it kind of manifests and passes on to them as well. They have their own kind of challenges to deal with and to work through, but they're literally absorbing our own challenges as well. And this is what I learned when I worked with the wolves. So I was just like, yeah, really best time of my life, but also worst time of my life. And there was a beautiful woodline that I used to always visit every day, and there's this beautiful tree that I would just sit on, and it was a really weird shape. It came out the ground at a bit of like a horizontal angle and then came up, but when I could sit on the horizontal part of the tree, of the trunk, it would kind of bounce, and oh god, it would just bring so much comfort. And I remember sitting on that tree and just literally crying, just snot, tears, like proper Hollywood movie, like the end is nigh type blah. And I literally heard the words, "You are enough," and I was mortified because like, oh my god, someone literally is stood behind me watching me. Mortified, turned around, there was nobody there, and I was like that. I'm a little bit freaked out, but there's definitely someone around. And then I heard it again, and then I realised it was the tree, and I was like, "What?" And that really took me then on this deeper journey of yeah, creating this wholeness, this completeness for ourselves and for our dogs as well. And that was kind of, that happened just really days probably before then I left. And so yeah, my work with the wolves in itself was also very interactive, physical, incredible, emotional, spiritual as well. You know, they just their presence, just being in their magnificence, being in their glory, bringing their presence, just teaches you so much about yourself, and really teaches you about the simplicity of what they seek, what they need, what is important to them. And really with that brings some great teachings. But I mean, you know, going in with a group of wolves and sitting with them as they're feeding on a carcass, going in with a group of wolves and howling with them, particularly on a beautiful summer's day, like out with them until 10 o'clock at night, just being there to really micro observe their behavior, their interactions, like who does what, who interacts with who and in what way, how their behavior changes through the seasons. Yeah, this beautiful, almost like telepathy that they have, just in terms of their communication, is, yeah, it's just incredible.
I'm like, I can envision myself, like a lot of what you said in that I can kind of resonate to. And I was thinking along the way, I was like, firstly, the tree, whoa.
I know, it really was. It's just like that. Like, I love sharing that story because, as I say, I've followed this path since like a child, but yeah, I've gone really deep with it. I mean, that was 10 years ago now, and so I've gone really deep with it since then. I was just like, there is something so much deeper. Yeah, that's important to bring out for ourselves, for our dogs, and as we do that, you know, that gives everyone else permission to also do the same thing, and that's the ripple effect. You know, we don't have to be this profound, like, I'm on a stage, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's whereas we do it ourselves, just for ourselves and our dogs, that literally still ripples out into the collective. That's what it's about.
100%, 100%. I was a little bit like, oh, I don't believe in the woo, and there's almost like a block there. And then when you kind of, I mean, I don't think I've gone as deep into it as you have, Isla, but I'm looking forward to that journey, because
Yes.
when you're in it, and I'm like, whoa, God, what else have I been like missing out on?
Yeah.
So amazing stuff, amazing. Um, so the wolves, you mentioned just briefly there about how present they are. I love that you picked up on this, because I speak to my guys about, you know, today I think we're surrounded by technology, we're surrounded by stuff on click of a button can, you know, we're just distracted in so many ways, aren't we? When now most of this podcast is for people with barking dogs, which we'll kind of come on to in
Okay, cool.
characters part as well. But I'm trying to get a question here, Isla, and I can't. Can we speak about being present with the dog and kind of learning from the presence that dogs and wolves bring?
Wow, yeah. I love how this conversation has just gone. "Wah," like I hadn't even intended it
Sorry.
to go this. No, don't apologize. I loved it's so important. I don't even know why I'm gonna put that pen down. I have a pen in my hand like I'm gonna make notes, and I don't even have a notebook. Yeah, do you know the best, like, yeah, wolves being present. I would not like non-human animals know nothing other than being present, because being present is living, operating, responding from the heart, and non-human animals know no other way. They literally are responding, feeling, yeah, from the heart constantly. And as humans, we are also an animal. That's exactly what we should be doing. But we kind of have these two brains, right? We have these two minds. We have three. So we have the body, but we have the heart and we have the head, and we get so conditioned into just do what the mind tells you, just believe what the mind tells you, just act and interact from what the mind tells you. And so we get so cut off from the heart, and actually that's one of the reasons why we do feel so lost and so disconnected and so confused and so stressed out. And it's going back into that present moment. And you know, for me, like, a lot of the work that I do with my own dogs, a lot of the work that I do on myself, a lot of the work that I do with my clients and on my talks is be present. Like, that's really what your dogs care about. Finally, they're like, there you are. I've only been waiting for that all day. It's just be present. And when we are, there's this anchoring, this hooking up, this locking in, and like, I don't know, a lock and key model, like two jigsaw pieces that fit perfectly, because we are then functioning, operating from heart presence, from heart awareness, from heart coherence. And that's where our dogs are living from. We're very noisy as an animal. We're very noisy because our vibration is kind of from our mind, and it can cause a lot of confusion for our dogs, and that again can affect their behavior and responses as well, because they're like, wow, you're not you know, you're not functioning from here. And when we function from the heart, that's what our dogs know, that's what our animals know, and it's a lot more clarity, it brings a lot more clarity for them. So yeah, practicing presence to begin with, for some dogs it can almost freak them out because they're just not used to us doing it, but as we practice it more and more as their guardian, the dogs are like, finally, like, there you are, I've only been asking for this for like all my life. And so it's just really beautiful to see in these, you know, powerful animals that they have such presence, you know, they're not as like the size of a bear, the size of an elephant, but just this knowing, this awareness, and yeah, just this beauty of, hey, this is who I am, and that's perfect, that's exactly who I am. It was just such a blessing to see and witness and to receive as a message as well.
I can imagine, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very easy to get lost in the whole, you know, that dogs are designed for purpose and they have this aura about them, and they're kind of not bred for purses, are they? You know, we've got
Yeah,
to
exactly.
remember.
Yeah, and yeah, in that sense, I suppose, like through, it's almost like a human made. Like our so many dogs now are kind of manufactured because we've kind of we made them become something. But it's almost like it's still like putting a round peg into a square hole. Because to me, yes, our dogs are domestic beings, but they are a genetically ancient canine. And for me, that's where my passion is, of how do we understand our dogs as genetically ancient canine, just likewise, how do we understand ourselves as genetically ancient human that is living in the modern day world? And that's what kind of creates these interruptions, these disturbances, because our ecosystem is so disrupted by living in a modern day world. It's striving and asking to be pulled back into a time that is still so innate within us, is still so primal and primitive, that we have lost, but our being, our soul is still kind of calling us to return to. And it's the same with dogs. We put so much stress on ourselves that we put the same level of stress on our dogs, and they are very good at letting us know that we are stressed and therefore they are stressed. They're very good at letting us know what it is they need and therefore what we need. They're so amazing at literally reflecting back to us of what it is that we need to be looking at ourselves. And that's really what I look at, like, we're so desperate to fix our dogs when actually there is nothing to fix, or we're so desperate to fix our dogs because we want to fix ourselves but it's too painful, or we're too embarrassed, or we feel too much guilt, or whatever it is that's just not true, that we just place it onto our dogs, and that puts a lot of pressure on them, a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I've been completely guilty of that, 100%.
Yeah, and you know, likewise in the past. I mean, this is, you know, I live a very, very different life now to how I used to. And just for the teachers, I used to be so caught up in my head and must be this and must be that and must be the other. And absolutely, yeah,
It's how we learn, isn't it? You know, we have to make mistakes to learn, and I'm
yeah,
sure everyone listening, there's probably, well, not everyone, but you know, most people listening might be able to resonate with this and go, actually, yeah, because a lot of what we do in the barking dog training, if you like, is we also look at the handler.
yeah,
I'm sure you'll have heard it before, when somebody's come to you with a barking dog problem, not only, or I call it problem, but they've come with an issue and they're anxious about it. They're getting embarrassed about it. They're starting to tense up and stuff. And like that, you call it an ecosystem, don't you? The
yeah.
team together needs that help and support, don't they? And I've gone off on a complete tangent there. I'm so sorry. This is how
No,
my
no, you haven't at all. Because you're right. It's almost like, you know, when we see it as a guardian, like, I really get people to like try as best as we can, like, don't see anything physical, because everything is just vibration, energy, and frequency. Everything. And I get some of my clients, some people I speak to get really confused. They're like, what do you mean everything is vibration? Like, when something vibrates a particular frequency, it creates form, it creates a matter. The best example I can give you, because it's incredible to watch, is like this like, I don't think it's a study. It's just, you can Google it, I think. But there's like examples and videos of cornstarch mixed with flour that different music is played to, like, literally just because of the vibration, it creates different forms. But at one point, it literally is like these bits of cornstarch are like little humans, and it gives you an idea of like, that's how vibration creates matter, that's how vibration creates something physical. But even from that perspective, when we look at our dogs, we look at ourselves, and we look at our family, and we look at maybe the cats that we live with, or the horses that everything is like, we are then just but a cell within a giant ecosystem. So absolutely, we can't just look at our dogs when they're living with us, because we are one of the same. We are then still an ecosystem. We are still then just two cells within a larger ecosystem that are flowing and communicating and having an effect on each other.
I mean, wow. I knew it. We've not even dived into it. I've just wrote down the cornstarch dance. I'm going to go and look at that afterwards.
Yeah, I watched it. It really, it just really helps to, because it is, I appreciate it's really hard to go, like I say, even thoughts become things. So when we think something, that literally creates something physical, because when we have a thought, it's a vibration, which can be quite mind-blowing for people. But yeah, watch these videos and it really helps you understand, well, sound is a vibration, and at a particular sound then makes this cornstarch like just create different forms, and you can then understand, like, oh, I understand how then something manifests as something, how a physical form takes place. And then, as a human, we have a different vibration to like the species canine, to the species feline, to the species equine, or whatever else. But then our own vibration will vary for individual depending on actually where it is that we live from and who we are.
Fascinating stuff. It really is fascinating, and like I say, I've only just started delving into this world, and it blows my mind. It really does.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
It's just fascinating.
It is, isn't it? It is. Right. Characters.
Functional characters, which is what the talk was supposed to be about anyway. We digressed, but we came back.
Hey, if you've got 2 hours, I'll keep you here all night. I'm happy to talk to you all night. But yes, functional characters. So what is functional characters?
Yeah, I love I love talking about functional characters, and it's funny because I always struggle to separate anything, so almost like decompartmentalize, because I'm like, functional characters are part of what makes up our dogs, but I always say to not consider them as a bit of a disservice, or quite a big disservice for our dogs, because our dogs are social group animals. So now when we're stepping beyond the vibration now that our dogs are, and they're a physical being, and they're a species canine, and they're still a social group animal. And so when I was doing my PhD wasn't in wolves at all, it was in conservation biology. But towards the end of my PhD, well, probably my final year of my PhD, I really decided that, like, I want to go work with wolves. I want to be a canid conservation biologist. I want to go out into the field. I don't care whether it's Europe or America. I literally just want to spend my days out, like, observing wolves, studying wolves, and bringing together a more harmony in conservation, coexistence, and conflict between top predators and humans. So because I was at uni doing my PhD, I had access to like every journal practically under the sun, and so I just was collecting as much as I could information on wolves, and that really varied from everything from like spirituality and symbolism and totems, all the way through to like behaviour and hunting and ecology. And so a lot of my work was around a wolf biologist called Gordon Haber. Fascinating guy. Like, he really was, he just spoke how it was. Like, he wasn't, his research isn't about like, I'm right, this is wrong, or I'm wrong, this is right. He just was like, this is how it is. And just an incredible guy. And when I started to read some of his work, he started to talk about this term functional character. And I was like, that's really cool. What is this? And so through his observation, he studied wolves in Alaska, so in the Denali National Park, for 45 years. And he only stopped studying them because, unfortunately, part of his work was that he would do it via plane. And unfortunately, he got a new pilot, and the pilot was inexperienced, and he crashed the plane into a mountains, and they both died. Yeah. So he just wasn't able to do it anymore. Really sad story. But yeah, he studied these wolves, of these different wolf packs, for 45 years, and through his observations, just time and time again, like when it was breeding season and cubs were born, and then just the pack operated as a group, or the individual operated as a group, he just started to notice in his observations that different individuals in that group seemed to have a different functional purpose, a functional role, and he classed them as functional characters. They have a particular persona, a particular character that highlights to the rest of the group, or highlights within themselves, as almost like an advert of, hey guys, within our group, this is who I am, this is my functional characters, this is what I do for the group, this is how I serve the group, this is how I harmonise the group together. And I found it so fascinating that I was like, wow, do dogs have functional characters? Like, I don't even know. Like, is that being diluted through domestication? Is it still a thing? Is it just applied to wolves? I don't know. And then I had Tunkasila at the time, And so I kind of started to explore it with her, and then very soon after, that's when I ended up working with the captive wolves, and you can just clearly see these functional characters in our wolves. But for me, because our dogs are domestic beings, they're domestic animal, but they are a genetically ancient canine still. There is these really deep, true, primitive canine instincts, desires, drives, attributes to them that tells me that, you know, they still are social group animals, so they still have these functional characters that defines to some extent, not excusing anything else, but to some extent, or if all else was equal, their likes, their dislikes, their expectations, how that dog is going to be, how that dog is going to cope, the speed at which that dog is going to learn, the speed at which we can put that dog into a more like active environment, or environment where there's a lot more stimuli than another functional character, and this then becomes profound of, you know, looking at what dogs do we already have in our existing household? What do we want that dog to be? Like, do we want it to be a companion dog? Do we have it as a particular purpose? Do we want it to be a show dog, a working dog? A working dog on what level? Do we want it to be an assistance dog? Because then we can start to identify these functional characters of ones that would be best suited to a particular lifestyle, a particular home, a particular environment, and ones that are going to struggle for different reasons based on the natural way that they're going to respond to their environment based on the functional character that they are. Yeah. I know.
The dog is much more than just a dog. So
absolutely, yeah.
I hear this a lot. I hear like, oh, my old dog wasn't like this, or oh, the being naughty, or that it's like this is like their character and stuff. And it's a lot deeper than that, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, it's I always struggle when someone's, and again, I put my hands up, I'm sure I've said it in the past, like, oh, I had a naughty dog or whatever, but our dogs understand everything. They really understand everything that we're saying, and yeah, from that perspective as well, even when we hear someone that says, oh, like, I've had dogs for X number of years, I had dogs for 40 years, I've never had a dog like this one, then yes, what is coming through is a dog's functional character, but also what's coming through is, from a soul perspective and a spiritual perspective, you are now ready to learn something new. You're now ready to learn something different. And that's what I love, that, you know, when we look at our dogs in terms of their functional character, the best way for me to explain it is, if we have been fortunate or unfortunate enough, if anyone's been a breeder or is a breeder, you know, we have a litter where that's our constant. They're from the same lineage, they've got the same ancestry, they've got the same maternal line, the same paternal line, they've been born in the same environment, they've been fed the same, they've been taught the same. Like, there are so many constants that are in the dog's favour, yet the way that they respond to their world, the way that they respond to life is so strikingly different. What we're seeing is the dog's functional character. I mean, as I say, putting aside, like, oh, has one of the dogs got an illness or a medical condition? Of course, we have to consider those things as well. But assuming all else is equal, what we're seeing in those differences between two littermates is, gender is also important, but say two brothers or two sisters, is the functional character that's coming through. Yeah.
Very so. You mentioned briefly there about having a guide. You've got a guide. Yeah. Do you want to dive into a little bit about each of the functional characters?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Tunkasila is a guide. Guides always make me smile. So I'm going to say there's pretty much 3 functional characters. I mean, I always say there's no such thing as a textbook dog. Unless we wrote a book for every dog in existence, there just is no such thing as a textbook dog. And I think it's quite cruel. We're very cruel on ourselves and hard on ourselves, because we get all these books to read, and like, my dog should be, it's almost like when not that I have children, but the parents that take their kids to school, they're like, oh, well, my child's reading, or my child's walking, or my child's now like level 6 swimmer, and we start to compare. We literally can't compare, because everything is different, and it's designed, that's how life is designed, so that we are constantly learning. So yeah, there's no such thing as a textbook dog, so we can give ourselves a hard time when we read all these things that our dog should be, or what our dog should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and I'm like, oh, it's, yeah, it's not the way that I work personally, but that is just my personal preference. But yeah, within that, there are 3 functional characters that can make us kind of really scratch our head, and one of them is the guide, because they are so different to what anything that we've read. And funnily enough, I just had an email from someone that's just done my online course of just like, wow, they've been over the functional character section time and time again, because it just so happens they've got a guide, and they were like, never had a dog like this before. I've had dogs all my life, blown my mind. I was really frustrated. I felt really depressed. I just didn't know what to do with this dog. Now she's a guide. I totally understand what her needs are. And so guides are a little bit tricky because they are, as the name would suggest, like they are the problem solvers for the group. They are the anchor that everyone satellites around, that everyone hones around to go, this is our guide. Our guide gives us direction. Our guide gives us purpose. Our guide tells us what to do, when we do it, and how long we're going to do that task for, how long we're going to do that job for. And so that kind of makes sense, like hearing that what I've just shared and maybe reading our dog books tells what dogs should be. We're like, well, that kind of makes sense. That's what dogs should be doing. Like, you know, we give them the purpose, or they have that purpose when they're with us, and we show them what to do. And of course, that's right. Anything, all of the functional characters kind of are collectively grouped as followers, but then they then split into separate functional characters. But anything that's not a follower is basically a guide. And the challenge is for dogs, obviously we are representing the guide as best as we can in human form, but we're not canines, so often we get it wrong or don't do a good enough job or a goodest job when we actually have a guide. But the problem the challenge that can arise is if we have a natural guide, we're kind of saying to that dog that is a guide, that is that problem solver, hey, listen to me, follow my lead, follow my guide, kind of do what I do from that, in that sense, not from like a draconian, like, you will do as I do, just literally like, I'm giving you support, I'm telling you how to be in this world and how to show up, what life is about. And guides are just like that. And no, I don't think so, because they represent knowledge. They literally have the knowledge for the rest of the group to tell the group, this is what we're going to do today, this is when we're going to do it, this is how long we're going to do it for. So we kind of almost like can be kind of like become loggerheads with our guys, with these dogs, because we can say, oh, the dog is stubborn, that, you know, some people might say the dog's just really stupid in the sense of the dog's being stubborn, but a guide is very much like, they will do what they want to do when they want to do it. And so that's why we have to be careful, of course, if we are new to having dogs, if we are new to a breed, if we're just not so confident with dogs, then we can allow a dog to get away with things just because we just allow them. That isn't a guide. When we have a guide, they're incredibly independent, and they're incredibly independent, and with that, therefore, their social network is a lot smaller. So they're not that typical dog that's going to be like, wow, human, oh my goodness, you're my best friend, even though I don't know who you are. They're like, I live with a human, so why do I want to interact with you? So there's this kind of snobbery. We kind of class it as like, oh, it's a bit of a snotty dog. There's this snobbery that can be seen. And presence, I mean, really, like, their presence is, they're so regal, and they like to be adored at distance. They like to be admired at distance, but heaven forbid, don't you dare touch a guide, because that's just, you know, not acceptable. I'm kind of jesting a little bit depending on the breed, but yeah, their social network tends to be a lot smaller. And the confusion and the challenge can be that we are trying, for our dogs, we are trying to be that natural guide, but when we have a natural guide, they're going to be like that, you're really bad at doing this, and I'm always going to know what's best for me and also the rest of my group. And so they have a little motto, which is, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I want everyone to do what I want everyone else to do. And that's kind of why this stubbornness can come through. And also they're just really, really independent. They want to do things when they want to do them. And even in terms of challenges and tasks and teaching, they're so intelligent that, again, we can get confused when we're told and taught, when we're teaching a dog something new, just repeat. You know, it's really helpful to repeat until it's really anchored into the dog's being like, okay, cool, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with this cue and this action or this movement or whatever, like, I've got it. And a guide can really quickly lose interest because you can show them once and they go, cool, got it. But if we then repeat it, they're like, you've already shown me what to do once, I'm not doing it again, I'm really bored. And so I know loads of guides, for example, that, you know, their guide is like, I'll take my dog to agility, like, my guide will love that. Or even having them in a working environment, but they need to put that teaching and training in, and the guide's like that, I'm really bored, I'm not doing this again. Or I'll do it my way, or I'll do it the way that brings me the most enjoyment. Or from that perspective, if they're in a group, I will do it the way that I want based on what I need to do given the other functional characters in the group. So it's not manipulation, because that's very much an ego-driven thing, which is mind-based, which dogs don't have from that perspective. It's just they know what to do, so that as a guide, their functional character is not diluted in the presence of other functional characters in a group. And that is what I really love to observe, because as a human, when we have a dog that's a guide, and there's other dogs around, the priority is the dog will do what it needs to do for the other dogs, irrespective of the human. So then we can, like, a great example, and I don't want people... Okay, when I first talk about functional characters, like, humans are really good. It's even when we read something, like, when that happens it's because of this, therefore my dog is doing that, so it must be this. So we're really good at making a confirmation bias, which I want us to not do now. But a great example for guides is, like, Tunkasila knows how to sit. She'll sit in front of my dogs. It's not something that I teach, but she will naturally sit in front of my dogs because it's her group. She knows them, so she feels comfortable in front of them, being around them. But if you have a guide and then you're in an environment where the dogs don't know each other, or it's like, we meet up at dog care, or I don't know, dog training class, and then you're told to, like, ask your dog to sit, a lot of guides won't, because even in how they stand and who they are and how they present themselves physically, changing their body position in front of another dog can change and dilute their functional character. And this is really, really important for guides. I know from a wild perspective, like, guides that are within a social group, if they are eradicated from that group, slowly but surely the rest of the group die, even if it's just full of adults. It's almost like, we've lost our guide. What do we do today? How do we hunt? What do we even hunt? Like, what time do we wake up? Like, it's almost like our guide's gone and our guide tells us what to do. They've gone. We just can't function anymore. So I know that does I know that does happen in the wild, or certainly, I mean, the last time that I looked into this, it was happening. And that's been a few years now. Yeah, and with a guide, there is actually a lot of detail to go into, because it can even affect how a guide interacts in the home, how a guide interacts with the dogs can vary depending on what we feed the guide. Because not only does a guide need to look like that individual, they also need to smell like that individual as well. So this is where sometimes we have to interplay with food depending on the functional characters that we have. It's something, not so much now that I just have 2 dogs, but when, only a few years ago when we had 7 dogs, my guide needed to be fed something different to my other dogs. And if she wasn't, just 3 or 4 days in a row, I kind of did this. I did this every now and again just to check that it still happened. Poor Tunkasila, I do apologise. But if she was fed the same food source just 3 or 4 days in a row, I've stripped away her ability to announce and advertise that she's a guide in her scent. And we all know that that's the way that dogs are advertising, first and foremost, is this is who I am. You can smell that in my scent, getting all that information. So I've taken that now away from her in how she advertises through what she smells and how she smells. So the only way she can now do that is to up her game in how she communicates with the dogs now physically. So a female guide is very much the problem solver and guide for her group. So she will make the decisions of where to go, when to go, and how long to stay there for. So all of a sudden I've taken away her ability to communicate that through her scent and her food. What she will do is just intensify that in her physical communication with the dogs. So my dogs get on fine, and then all of a sudden, like, Cola might want to come downstairs. Tunkasila's like, whoa, nah, you cannot come downstairs until I say that you can. Hooch might want to go outside. Tunkasila's like, nope, you can't go outside, not until I say that you can. One of them might want to jump on the sofa. Nope, you're not allowed to do that until I say that you can. She literally is intensifying her ability to communicate. I decide where you go, when to go, and how long to stay there for. Which, if she's fed this food source that's important for her as that functional character, there's absolutely harmony in our group. And so in that sense, it becomes really stressful. There's a lot of weight that she carries, or a guide can carry, if they're not receiving what they need to advertise fully the guide. And that's just a very, very small example. There is a whole lot we can get into, like movement and exercise, and even if we take another dog out without the guide, or we don't take the guide out first, and all manner of different things. Yeah, and also with that, our guides, really an important thing is, as individuals, we all absorb, and we all absorb and process trauma differently as individuals. So this is also true for dogs on an individual perspective. But as a rule, because guides are self-preserving, they do not expect their life to be on the line. the rest of the group would prevent that, almost as like a barrier, as a barricade. So if a guide has had trauma that is really internalized a lot harder and a lot deeper, then another functional character that for that dog would be more like that. Well, yeah, I got a little bit dusty and got a bit of a bruise, but hey ho, you know, life goes on. For a guide, it can be like, whoa, that never, ever, ever happens to me ever again. So what could be a one dog's little bump for a guide can be a really huge trauma that the dog can then struggle to accept if it ever sees again.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, when you're talking, because I think I'm pretty certain I've got a guide in Sky, and when she went through, firstly, similar to your story, like she went through a bit of trauma, she lost her best buddy, if you like, and I really noticed that it affected her, and I was like, you know, when you know nothing about this, and you kind of like, what's wrong with my dog?
Yeah.
And it starts all unraveling again, and it's incredible, isn't it? So if anyone's listening to this and going and like relating, then they could potentially have a guide.
Yeah, and I really don't like. Yeah, it's really important for me to just say like because there is so much to functional characters that we do it when I mean. You know, we are human. I'm the same. When you hear new information, we kind of try to find the dots to give us an answer because that's what we want. We're like, oh, I want further insight. I want more knowledge. I want more answer of why my dog does X, Y, or Z. Yes, and yeah, if there's kind of some little ticks or some little light bulbs sparking up, then yeah, you can explore more about what a guide is for sure. Because then in that perspective, even when you're talking about loss there as a trauma, there is like some functional characters will struggle with it more, or depending on the functional characters in the home. So for example, like another functional character is a defender. Defenders are your kind of classic textbook dogs of as I say, anything other than a guide is classed as a follower, but then followers split down, and so one of the categories underneath that collective of follower is a defender. They're big, they're strong, they're confident, and they are protectors. They can protect females more than males because this is where gender is important as a role now, regardless of functional character. Males within a group composition are also protectors. Females kind of get involved with provisions and care and nannying. Males can do nannying as well. Have you got anything to say, Tonks, on this? I know you miss your defender. Mm-hmm. We've talked about the guide. Yes, we know that you're a guide. We do.
That's
and
me.
Very beautiful. The thing with a guide as well is that they're stunning. This is the problem. Everybody wants to touch a guide, but guides are like, whoa, who are you? Like, you don't touch me. Like, I know humans and don't touch me. So as I say, they like to be admired, but from a distance. But the hard part for a human is that we want to touch, particularly when we're told we can't touch. But yeah, defenders, as I say, are like within your gender are males are natural kind of protectors, but we also have a functional character that is a defender. They're big, they're strong, they're confident, they will defend and protect their group, and then also they will enforce guidelines, rules, teachings that they have been taught themselves that they will also then teach younger individuals in their group composition. That could be younger dogs, but it can also be children, which is what we also have to pay attention to. And, you know, regardless of breed, this is a thing we have to, of course, acknowledge and pay attention to breed dispositions and breed traits. That's important. But for me, because I've looked at functional characters in breeds from Yorkshire Terriers all the way up to wolf dogs, and I see them. So I've even seen defender functional characters even in like Chihuahuas and Yorkshire Terriers and those like smaller breeds. You kind of think, oh, well, all German Shepherds must be defenders. No, that is not true at all. Or all like Huskies must be defenders. We think of big dogs as defenders. No, there's within the litter we have these different functional characters. But they are that dog that loves to work. They are that dog is like, wow, my human's interacting with me. Wow, my guide as a human is interacting with me. They're giving me instruction. They're giving me focus. They're telling me to do something. They're telling me that I'm doing a really good job. And it can be repetitive because they're workers. Let's just keep on going. But we can just repeat and repeat and repeat. And that's kind of, for me, like that classic textbook dog is kind of your defender when they're balanced, because as I say, all dogs can be subject to trauma. But I've worked with another functional character as an example because it was a really incredible case where another functional character is classed as an observer. So not that anything is in a ladder, it's not it's kind of, you've got guides and then everything else is linear, but they all function as a unit. So I don't want it to kind of be like, oh, there's one at the top and one at the bottom, but a little bit further. They're not further down the ladder, but in terms of their confidence, in terms of how they show up, they are a naturally shy, nervous, and suspicious dog. They are an observer. Their function within their group. Imagine now we've got a group composition of 10 dogs, 10 wolves. In this group composition, we've got an observer. They're scatty, they're nervous, they're skulky. They're like, oh, I've just heard it. Oh, it's the wind. Okay, I've just heard a noise. Oh my goodness. They get so much support from their group because the rest of the group doesn't operate and function from that level. They're like, cool, that's your functional character, that's your purpose within our group composition, but we are still here to unite you and support you. And their role, really, their functional purpose is when the rest of the group is distracted, so largely like at feeding time when everyone else is being in the wild, when everyone else is like eating on the carcass, you have this observer that's just, everyone's distracted, so my defender now that's supposed to protect and defend is now busy eating. So I'm just on the sideline, just looking for every shadow, for every movement, for every noise, for every smell, and like responding to that, being a bit jumpy, being a bit spooky, and not appearing not to be very, very confident. So, I mean, I've seen this time and time again in litters of pups where we're seeing these observers. But now imagine we take an observer home and it doesn't have its group composition. It becomes really intensified. Now imagine that we take this observer home and we get an observer, we get this puppy in the winter time where we're just going to put that dog out to go to the toilet, but because it's winter time and it's 8 o'clock at night and we're in our pajamas and it's snowing, we don't want to stand out with the dog, but we're like, it's only the back garden, like I definitely know nothing can get in the back garden, so we put that little puppy outside to go, like, go to the toilet, just go and explore on your own. Like, that's far too much for an observer. Like, their entire world is just crumbled in that sense. So someone contacted me I can't remember how long ago it was now, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a bit longer, because they had a dog that really sounded, they didn't know anything about functional character, but it sounded classically like an observer, this shy, nervous dog. And it was that bad that they couldn't walk the dog. The dog would go into the back garden, but they could not get this dog outside. And they tried really everything that they could think of. They had various behaviourists saying, which, to be fair, the other behaviourists, everything they'd said was right. They hadn't said anything wrong. Just nothing was working. And so they just said, look, someone suggested that. They contacted me to see if I had anything to suggest. And I was like, the only other thing I can think of is looking at functional character. So it really sounds like you've got an observer based on the information I collected about the dog. And I was like, we need to go around your neighbourhood and see if we can find a male defender. That's what we need to do. And so luckily we did. That's what we did. Luckily we found someone. We just went out on our own, explained to this random person who had this dog, like, this is what we're doing. Is your dog friendly? We think your dog might be a defender. Like, can you come to this person's house? And so we met in the back garden. And this little observer just fell in love with this male defender. And you know what? As long as that male defender was outside, this observer would walk for miles. But try and get that dog out on its own. I'm not going out that house. So this is why they integrate with functional character. I mean, that was an extreme case. Most observers are happy to leave the house, but that was an extreme example where, again, you can play with the patterns and rules of functional character, of what it represents in terms of group support and group composition, of just really in that sense like what a defender represents for its group.
It's fascinating because, I imagine, or I might be wrong, but you might see a lot more of these, is it onlookers?
Observers.
Observers. Do you see a lot more of these for training as opposed to another character? Because of the from pet dog homes, for example.
Yeah, do you know, it's a really good question. From my experience, no, because there is so much, as I said, like how we start this talk, really, like there is so much pressure on our dogs. Like there's like, it's almost like even we have the perfect dog, there is still something not quite right with the dog. Whereas for me, I mean, Tunkasida is a reactive dog, not that you'd think, but for me, I'm like, but she's still perfect because that's who she is. That's who she's meant to be. That yes, we've come from a soul level. We've come to walk this walk together for us to learn. And my goodness, I mean, even it's just like, thank you, Tunkasida, for being reactive, because she literally saved my life. Because I was at a point in my life where I was like, I'm going to end it. I'm going to end my life, and I can't because she's a reactive dog. No one else to look after her. Like I'm not having her fate decided because of a selfish choice that I'm choosing from that perspective. And I really say that with an open heart. I don't mean if we're in that place of that place of desperation, it's not selfish in that sense, but really literally saved my life, because I'm like, I'm not having her be destroyed. But she's still, you know, I understand her reactivity. I understand where it comes from. I've worked at it from a soul perspective. I mean, two of the biggest things that have massively helped her is working on myself and also giving her a soul retrieval. So I do it with dogs that need soul retrievals, and it's not taking the trauma away. How she's explained it to me is like, that is her biology. That's how her biology works. But the biggest difference, and for me, that's, I can't ask for anything more, is if she saw something that she reacted to, it would take her in the past 4 days to recover. She would be up a height for like 3 or 4 days. Now it can be 10 minutes, if that. For me, that, like, I don't want anything else from that. So yeah, from that perspective, I don't necessarily. I feel like all functional characters, because even with guides, because there is a stubbornness there. Like, people are like, oh well, my dog's stubborn. I want my dog to listen to me more. I want my, like, a great example with a guide, and Tunker and Sealer and I have this agreement, and this is one of the things. This is one of the things that I teach time and time again with a client that has got a guide. Is every now and again, or you know, even 70% of the time for the dog and 30% of the time for you, allow that dog to make a decision, even on your daily walk, which route does your dog want to walk on. Because if you're constantly going, we're going this way, we're going this way, the guide is going to get more and more frustrated, because not because you're doing anything wrong or because the dog shouldn't, because you've got a guide. The dog wants to be able to choose every now and again, I want to go this way today. And even little things like that for a guide are just so anchoring and harmonizing between that human and canine relationship and interaction and coexistence. But yeah, you know, someone's got a guide, then there's things about the guide that they're not happy with because of what the preconceived idea of having a dog is, and how that dog should be living with us and responding to us. With defenders, we might have a defender, we don't want it to be a defender, so we're trying to, like, I want my dog to be something that it can't be. Even like with followers, like, followers are, like, I know I said collectively anything other than a guide is a follower, but then we also have, as a functional character, a follower. They're a little bit slower. So again, it's like, oh, someone not recognizing that they have a follower and expecting this dog to do something that's just hasn't quite processed to do. Your overseers are like Zebedee on smack. They're very high energy, high, like, crazy, unless everything is calm. I mean, that's what overseers are the epitome of. People struggle to understand overseers because they become a really high wired dog when there are many things to check up on, when there are many things that are going on, because the job of an overseer is to check each and every day, is everybody who they are today, is everybody how and who they are today as what they were yesterday. And as soon as, so they're like a physical barometer. And as soon as someone starts to have different thoughts, or their heart rate starts to change, if there's a lot of toing and going, imagine a household where there's like a stressed out mum and dad, and they've got kids coming in and out, and Fred's coming round and screaming up and down the house. For an overseer, that's like, oh, so many things to have to keep under control. And it is, the overseer is very much about, is everybody in the group calm? Because for harmony, for presence, for health, for peace, for our group just to function, we should be operating and functioning most of the time from calm, in terms of your wild animals, the wild canines, but also our domestic canines and ourselves. And so where there is not calm, they're like have a siren, like whoop 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 whoop, and that just makes them go, you're not calm, I'm letting you know you're not calm. And so the irony is, when an individual in their group or in their surroundings is not calm, it makes them also not be calm, to highlight that as a message to us. I need you to be calm again. So yeah, I think regardless of functional character, there's any functional character can be asked for assistance and help, because it's not the ideal dog. It's not the romantic side of how someone may envisage their dog to be, or also the dog that how they want their dog to be. Whereas, like, for me, I'm like that. We can't decide what we want our dogs to be. They're showing up fully present of who they are.
It's interesting, and like I don't know anything really about functional characters, so it was interesting to ask that question to see if you'd like almost see any more one than the other, if you like. Can I ask you quickly 2 questions on first and foremost, the little puppy who struggled to go out and get in the defender.
Yes.
Is it sometimes beneficial? Can I just state, please don't run out and get another dog.
Yeah, don't do that.
Is it beneficial for somebody to potentially get another dog to help with those sorts of dogs?
And do you know, yeah, sometimes yes, and like you said, it really depends on the functional character that you choose. There's actually, in terms of like in my early days as a zoologist, I did a lot of studies in ecology, and because there's a kind of a framework that I apply in terms of natural ecology, population dynamics for our dogs, where there's a little pattern that we can use to look at like, oh, these two dogs would get on so well. These two dogs, that totally makes sense why there's this conflict with each other. So there's that to kind of consider as well. But yeah, it depends on the functional character because, for example, say someone reads like, oh, it can be really supportive. If you've got a dog that has separation anxiety, or for argument's sake, you've got an observer, but you don't know you've got an observer. Sorry, my microphone is I just kicked my microphone off the stand. Yeah, you don't know you've got an observer. And then you read or someone recommends, oh, do you know what? I used to have an only dog and it was a really nervous dog, but I got a second dog. My dog was absolutely fine. So you're like, do you know what? We can afford it and we've got the time. Let's get a second dog to support our first. If you get a second observer, if you get a dog that's equally like, you know, even a follower might not give that observer enough support, then it becomes the blind leading the blind. So you might end up with two dogs that are equally nervous. Or what can happen is, you know, a dog comes with its, of course, not just functional character, but just its own innate way of learning and responding and being. But of course, a dog also learns through ourselves and through older individuals. So let's now say, for example, you have got an observer that's maybe 5 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and then you decide, you know what, we need to be able to go out of the house. We need to be able to support this dog. We need to go for longer walks with this dog. Let's bring in another dog, and you get that dog as a puppy. Then that puppy can also learn. It might be a defender, it might be a follower, it might be an overseer, but equally it's like, oh, I'm now in a household with an adult dog, and this older dog is already telling me this place is quite scary, is something to be wary of. Then that can also create, it can sometimes be extra work for us to do. So it's not just about getting a second dog, it's about getting the right functional character. And I did say they're a defender, but actually a defender is going to be more stoic in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Hence why I said, like, people, please don't rush out and buy another dog, just in case.
Don't be like, oh, I've got an observer, I'm going to get another dog. Yeah, don't do that.
Definitely don't do that. I did have a second question, but it's gone. Completely gone. So let me ask you, do you have a favorite character?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh my goodness. You know, I love them. I love them all because of all the challenges that they bring. Like, even overseers, pull you. If you don't know an overseer, they will make you pull your hair out. Whereas when you know them, I just love them because they literally are like, they teach you about being calm, and so they are like your medical aid. I don't know if someone's kind of has to monitor, like if someone's diabetic and they've got to monitor their bloods. Okay, my blood's now a little bit like too low or too high, or I've got to monitor my heart. Oh, my blood pressure's gone a little bit too high or a bit too low. They're like that physical barometer to go, lady, you need to calm yourself down. You're literally getting to, like, come on, come back to being present, come back to being grounded, come back to like who you are. Yeah, I love them. I think so. I just love all dogs, so it's almost like asking, do I have a favorite? Yeah, I love all functional characters.
It was worth slipping in there just to see.
I like the because I like the challenge of a guide, and I like the intelligence. Yeah, I definitely love having a group of dogs and interacting and living with the different functional characters.
Yeah. You're welcome here anytime. I have 4, but I'll crack the barbecue. I'll sort that side.
Yeah, so that's
watch the dog.
Blast at the barbecue and just chill out, be with the dogs, look at their functional characters.
We'll get Sarah on the guitar up, and
Sarah can be like serenading us. That sounds amazing. We'll have to do it.
Let's book it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Isla, I'm conscious of the time. Thank you so much for giving up your time and coming to chat to us.
You're welcome.
Where is the best place for people to go and find out more about you and what you do?
Oh, well, Tunga Celia, you're so adorable. Yeah, my website, which actually has got like 3 pages that still haven't been written up yet. So my website's kachinacanine.com. That's Kachina, Kachina. But also, like, I have Kachina Canine on my as a Facebook business page, so Kachina Canine Wellness, and then just my personal Facebook page. And I have access to a free ebook that you can download. I've got loads of stuff on YouTube. I'm terrible at doing my own stuff. Like, I really will say that now. So there's loads of stuff. Like, I've done a few talks on functional character for like for Bella and Duke, for example, and some other companies. So I've done, like, there's a fair few videos you can find that I've done on YouTube, but through other organisations, not just my own YouTube channel. Because I have one, but like, and yeah, not quite there yet, and kind of even understanding it or doing something on it. So yeah.
Right, cool. Well, I can put the links in as well.
Perfect.
That's brilliant. Is there anything else that you wanted to pick up on? Is there anything that you feel that we've kind of missed?
Yeah, I mean, well, I haven't talked about all the functional characters, but I guess
Oh.
yeah. I mean, there's not that, but like, yeah, there's a few others, but yeah, you know, it's yeah, I just love it as a subject. But just at that point of making that point of, it's not the only thing. In fact, have I got it in front of me? I did. Ah, yeah, I have. So one of the things that I've made is the canine wellness wheel. So it's almost like if you place your dog's name, imagine your dog's here in the middle. These are all the different factors, all the different energy gateways, as I refer to them, that like create a strong and stable ecosystem that our dogs are, or all the different factors that can kind of create disharmony and distress. So one of them is functional character, which is why for me it's important to consider it, but it's not like the only thing. So I mean, I know it's so helpful. People that have multiple dog households, people that are breeders, people that are choosing a first time dog, people that run dog daycares, people that are dog walkers, people that have a dog creche. Even that lady that sent me that email today, she's like, wow, you've just changed my understanding and therefore my relationship with my dog. And with herself as well, she's like, you know, I was getting really frustrated. I was thinking, was it me? What am I doing wrong? But like, you're not doing anything wrong. But equally, you have a guide. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine there's lots to dive into, and
Yes.
I bet we've not even scratched the surface, have we?
Nah. Nah.
Well, thank you for giving me a little scratch on the
You're
surface.
well, thank you for inviting me and asking me to speak about this subject that I love so much.
I can see you're passionate about it. I know it's a topic that I'm really, really keen to learn more about. And on your website, you've got a course all about it, haven't you?
Yeah, on my website, yeah, I've got 2 online courses. I've got an online course that's more comprehensive, which is complete canine wellness. So that kind of goes through the canine wellness wheel. There's a module all on functional characters and population dynamics. And then it just goes into life stages, and then like a little bit more like the spiritual side that we can be doing. And then with that, you join like a private Facebook group, and you get to join my weekly journeying group, my monthly journeying group for you and your dog. And so there's more kind of involvement from the bigger course. But I also then took module. So basically the canine wellness course, module 2, is just functional characters and population dynamics. And because people were asking me, like, we want to do your canine wellness course, but maybe at a later date, but we really want information on functional characters now, there is just a course on, I've just literally taken that part of the teachings, and that's a standalone course which you can find on my website. Also, my website, you can find my free ebook, and also there's a free webinar that people can listen to, which is a little bit about like everything. It's a little bit of, I think it's like canine wellness and indigenous wisdom, so understanding our dogs as the canine that they are, but also the spiritual being that they are, and how we can look at vibration and functional character and all manner of different things.
Exciting stuff. I've got myself on that, so I highly recommend that anybody listening to this or watching this on YouTube goes and does exactly the same, because it's fucking
thank you so much.
No, thank you, Isla. One last thing before you go.
Yeah.
I do ask all of my guests to do this, and it would be awesome if we could hear the best impression of a barking dog.
Oh, okay.
Which one's you gonna do?
I know what I'm gonna do. So that's like almost like a whisper one. So wolves don't bark, and wolves obviously howl, but there is one bark that they do, and that's the little whisper when they're like, oh, guys, I've heard something. I don't want them to know that I don't want them to know that I've heard it, but I'm letting you know. So they do like this little like, and I love when dogs do that.
That was I always felt like I was in a room full of wolves. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much again, Isla. Thank you to the listeners. I really, really loved every single part of that. And maybe if Isla would want to do a part 2 at some point, I'd be game for that.
Yeah, we can do a part 2. Even like because we do functional character. Well, Tunky doesn't join us because you're not so keen on people and dogs, are you? But yeah, there's also functional character workshops that I do as well. Oh, and also with that, what I should say is so there is a friend of mine, Heather Stevens, who has done my course, and she loves functional characters as much as I do. So Heather Stevens has a Facebook group called Beyond the Breed, which is really about functional characters and some other stuff. But she also, with that, has just recently written a book called Beyond the Breed, which is about functional characters. It's like my teachings, and then she is a very well established behaviourist, and she has a dog creche. She's had a dog creche for many years. So then it's also her experiences of just her interpretation of functional characters and interactions. And so yeah, so if people kind of want are new to this and they just kind of like want to test the waters without a big investment, or a bigger investment I should say, look at Beyond the Breed as well, and also the book's called Beyond the Breed, so there's information that way as well.
Brilliant stuff. I will certainly be checking that out as well. I've written it down. Beyond the Breed. Thank you so much, Isla.
You are so welcome.
Pleasure chatting to you. It's been great to find out a little bit more about characters and dogs.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for asking me. Likewise, it's been lovely chatting to you as well.
Thank you so much. And to
You're
the
so
listeners,
welcome.
thanks again. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Look forward to it. Bye.
Bye-bye.